It is one of the most famous stories in human history, a story of faith, warfare, and the impossible. 7 priests, 7 trumpets, 7 days of marching around a fortress, and then, with a single, unified shout, the massive walls of Jericho came tumbling down. For centuries, this was accepted as historical fact, but in the modern era, the narrative shifted. The rise of scientific archaeology brought with it a wave of skepticism. In the 1950s, the renowned British archaeologist Dame Kathleen Kenyon conducted extensive excavations at the site. Her conclusion sent shockwaves through the biblical world. She declared that during the time of Joshua, around 1400 BC, there was no city, no walls, and no king at Jericho. According to her, the site was abandoned. The implication was devastating. The Bible got it wrong. For decades, professors and historians have used Jericho as Exhibit A to prove that the conquest of Canaan was nothing more than a pious myth, a folktale invented centuries later. But evidence dug from the earth tells a different story. In recent years, a re-examination of the site has uncovered details that were previously overlooked or misinterpreted. We are talking about a story of fire, collapsed mud bricks, unlooted treasury, and a timeline that matches the Bible with terrifying precision. The critics said the city wasn't there, but the stones are crying out. Today, we are reopening the cold case of Jericho to separate fact from fiction. To understand the miracle, we must first understand the obstacle. Jericho isn't just any ancient ruin. It is widely considered the oldest inhabited city on Earth. Located in the Jordan Valley, about 850 feet below sea level, it was a tropical oasis in the middle of a harsh wilderness. Known as the City of Palms, it controlled the precious fresh water of the Elisha Spring. For the Israelites, emerging from 40 years of wandering in the desert, Jericho was the strategic key to the entire land. It guarded the routes leading up into the hill country. You couldn't bypass it without leaving your rear flank exposed. To take the Promised Land, they had to take Jericho. But that was easier said than done. The city was a marvel of military engineering, designed to be impregnable. It wasn't protected by a single fence, but by a formidable double-wall defense system. Imagine standing at the bottom, looking up. First, you would face a massive stone retaining wall, the revetment wall, rising 15 feet high. On top of that stood a steep, plastered earthen rampart, and crowning that rampart was the main city wall, built of red mud bricks, towering another 20 to 25 feet into the air. To a soldier standing at the base, the top of the wall was nearly 40 feet up, as high as a 4-story building. And remember, Joshua's army had no siege engines, no battering rams, no catapults, no siege towers. They were a nomadic people, not a professional siege army. Facing such fortifications, the only military option was a long starvation blockade that could last months or years. Yet the biblical account in Joshua chapter 6 describes a strategy that sounds militarily absurd. Marching in circles, blowing ram's horns, shouting. It defies all logic of ancient warfare. But when we put down the text and pick up the shovel, what do we actually find in the dirt? Let's look at the first piece of hard evidence, the walls themselves. During excavations in the early 20th century and later confirmed in the 1990s by Dr. Bryant Wood, archaeologists found something startling at the base of the mound. They discovered a massive pile of fallen red mud bricks. Now, in ancient warfare, walls can fall in many ways. If a battering ram hits them, they might breach inward. If the city surrenders, the walls stay standing.
But here, the bricks from the upper wall had fallen outward and tumbled down to the base of the stone retaining wall. The volume of debris was massive, but notice the specific configuration. Archaeologists realized that these fallen bricks formed a natural earthen ramp against the lower wall. Listen closely to the biblical text in Joshua chapter 6. The King James Version says the wall fell flat. The original Hebrew phrasing is actually more descriptive. It suggests the wall fell beneath itself. The archaeology confirms this literal translation. The walls collapsed outward, filling the ditch and creating a ramp. The debris didn't block the invaders, it paved the way for them. The Bible says the soldiers went up into the city, every man straight before him. They didn't need ladders, they walked right up over the ruins of the enemy's defenses.
But the destruction didn't end with the collapse. Joshua 6:24 adds another specific detail. And they burned the city with fire and all that was therein. Is there evidence of this inferno? Absolutely. Excavators found a destruction layer of ash, charcoal, and debris about 3 feet thick. This wasn't a small accidental fire. The evidence shows the entire city was incinerated at incredibly high temperatures. The fire was so intense that it turned pockets of the mud brick into hardened clay. Crucially, the archaeological stratigraphy shows that the burning happened after the walls collapsed. This perfectly mirrors the biblical sequence. First, the walls fall, then the army enters, and finally, they set the city on fire. But here is the smoking gun, the piece of evidence that makes Jericho unique among almost all ancient conquests. In the burnt ruins, excavators found storage jars, many of them, and they were full of charred grain. Why is this strange? In the ancient world, grain was the most valuable commodity. It was currency. It was life. A conquering army would always loot the grain to feed their troops, or if the siege had been long and drawn out, the people inside the city would have eaten the grain down to the last kernel. Finding full jars of grain tells us 3 critical facts that align with the Bible. The siege was very short. The people inside didn't have time to consume their supplies. The Bible says the siege lasted only 7 days. It happened in the spring. The jars were full, meaning the harvest had just been gathered. The Bible states the Israelites crossed the Jordan right after Passover, which is the spring harvest season. The city was not plundered. This is the most incredible part. In the Joshua 6, God issues a strict command. Keep yourselves from the accursed thing. The Hebrew word is herem, devoted to destruction. Jericho was the first fruits of the Promised Land, and the first fruits always belonged to God. The soldiers were forbidden to take personal loot. Those jars of grain, left untouched for 3,000 years, are a silent witness to the obedience of those soldiers. They could have been rich, they could have fed their families, but they left it all to burn, exactly commanded. So, if the evidence matches so perfectly, why did critics say it was a myth? It comes down to dating. Kathleen Kenyon dated the destruction to 1550 BC, too early for Joshua. She based it on the absence of a specific type of imported pottery. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Later analysis by Dr. Bryant Wood looked at what was found, not what was missing. In the tombs of Jericho, they found Egyptian scarabs, royal seals. These seals bear the names of pharaohs from the 15th century BC, including Amenhotep III. These kings were reigning exactly when the Bible places Joshua. The city was alive and active exactly when the Bible says it fell. So, let's put the puzzle together. We have a heavily fortified city in the late Bronze Age. We have walls that fell outward to form a wrap. We have a massive fire that happened after the collapse. And we have a short siege in the spring with no looting. The stones do not lie. The history recorded in the book of Joshua is not a fairy tale. It is a memory etched into the earth itself. But why does this matter to us today?
Jericho wasn't just a military victory, it was a lesson in trust. God asked Joshua to do something illogical. Walking in circles doesn't make walls fall. Shouting doesn't break stone. From a human perspective, the plan was foolish. But the victory didn't come from the strategy, it came from obedience. Perhaps you are facing a Jericho in your life right now, a wall that seems too high, a problem that won't move. The story of Jericho reminds us that the God of history is still the God of today, and when we walk in His ways, even the strongest walls can come tumbling down. Thank you for watching this investigation. If you want to dig deeper into history and uncover the truth behind the Bible's greatest mysteries, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Next week, we're opening the file on the Red Sea crossing. Did it happen, and where? You won't want to miss that. Keep seeking the truth.